Hey, what's up? Uncle Dane here for a bit of an extended second channel, I don't know, like behind the scenes kind of video about the last episode of the Stock Engineer Weapons trilogy. So I made a small point in the very beginning of the video where I talked about certain unlocks because I wanted something to compare the stock wrench to, right? When I was comparing it to the other unlocks. So I gave a whole bunch of other examples in these very quick screenshots of a compilation of weapons that I personally consider, first off, strong in certain situations, but weaker in most, and then these ones which are strong in most situations and better than stock. And I feel like I was reading through the comments because generally after I'd say the first 24 hours after I upload a video, I generally skim through the comments to see what people think if I messed up, because obviously people are going to correct me on things. By the way, I now know that there are no clip-fed weapons in TF2. That is actually an error that the game actually makes itself, referring to magazines and those kind of things as clips. And also the pistol doesn't have a clip. It has a magazine. Good to know. I'm not a gun person in real life, so I just kind of go by what the game says. But I also just made a mistake in calling the fire mechanic of the pistol semi-automatic. What I meant to say was fully automatic, and I feel like it's an easy mistake to make because whenever I think of fully automatic, I think of like an AK, and for some reason when I thought of the pistol, I was like, that's not an automatic pistol, but it is. It is fully automatic, not semi-automatic. Anyway, I wouldn't have known that if I wasn't reading through my comments, so thank you to everybody who pointed that stuff out. Anyway, in the comments, I was reading a lot of interesting discussions, mostly spurred on and triggered by these two screenshots, because I think people have their own ways of looking at these weapons, and I just wanted to maybe weigh in on specifics on why I chose these random set of weapons. I mean, like, you could also put a multitude of other weapons here. It's just like I just kind of went through I literally went to the TF2 wiki page and I just started downloading the images of all the weapons that I thought fit into these categories. So I'll just go through them. We'll start with the screenshot that I put up here of strong in certain situations, but weaker in most. In other words, what I feel an unlockable weapon is intended to be used as generally. Like, you want to use an unlockable weapon most of the time. Like, stock should be the baseline, and then the unlockable weapon should be like, oh, I'm running into this situation a lot, I should switch to this. And that's what a lot of these weapons are. So we'll start just in no particular order. I'll just start from the left. The Darwin's Danger Shield. Obviously, it makes you practically immune to fire. So if there are no pyros on the other team, then there's literally no reason to equip this. And if there are a lot of pyros on the other team, especially ones that are spamming you with the Scorch Shot repeatedly or running at you as sniper, then you have every reason to equip this. So it is very situational in that regard. Moving on, the Dead Ringer. I'd say that, I mean, obviously, I think this one's more playstyle dependent, to be honest, but overall, I feel like the main reason why it would be situational to equip the Dead Ringer is if you feel like you are not able to effectively cloak past certain chokes. This is really effective in heavily spammed chokes such as Dust Bowl or Gold Rush or Hoodoo or all of those like places where like you literally cannot get through a choke invisible. It's impossible. The Dead Ringer is really good for that, so I feel like that is why I put it in here. It's situational in that regard. The Direct Hit. Now, the Direct Hit actually is a straight upgrade, believe it or not, from stock, as long as you can always hit directs. So, obviously, just always hit people, and it's a straight upgrade. Obviously, that's not going to happen. So, in that regard, it can effectively be a playstyle-oriented weapon, but generally, people usually just equip this if they want to make a scout's day a little worse, or if they want to specifically take down an engineer's nest. I know that, especially on like Badwater first attacking, if there's like an engineer's nest on the hill, I'll literally just go direct hit jump to the rock on the right-hand side coming out of blue spawn and shoot the gun and then go back into spawn and switch to something else. Like, it's that's practically the main use that this gun has, so that's why it's in here, because it's very situational in that if a gun needs to be taken down, then you take it out. This knife, it's escaping me. I fucking have almost 10,000 hours in this game, and I can't remember what this knife is called, but it's the knife that you use with the Jarate. I feel like this is pretty much the only reason why this is situational in this is because if you're not using the Jarate along with this, and to some extent if you're not using the Cleaner's Carbine, then there's not really any reason to equip this. So I feel like it's very dependent on your secondary in a way. It's very much a combo weapon, so that's why I put it in here. The Frontier Justice. Now, that's obviously situational. If your gun is never killing anybody, your sentry gun that is, never getting any kills on it, if it keeps dying repeatedly, then there's not really any reason to equip this. You're just neutering your own ability to shoot people. So yeah, very situational in that regard. If your gun has kills on it when you come out of spawn, you equip it. I went over that in my shotgun video. The banana. Now, this was one that I feel like got a lot of comments about. The banana, in my experience, I only really equip the banana if I'm not getting pocketed by a medic. So the banana, I feel like, comes out a lot because as heavy, it's kind of rare, at least in pubs, to get pocketed by a medic all the time. So I can understand why it would be a popular item. I definitely use it a lot. But if you're going to be pocketed by a medic, then you want to use the sandwich. So by its very nature, this thing is generally better for the quote-unquote roaming heavy style, right? So it's situational in that regard. It's situational because you're playing around whatever your teammates are doing, and if your teammates are playing medic, then this one doesn't really come into play as much. Same can be said about the gloves are running urgently. I feel like the gloves are running urgently. They benefit the roaming heavy play style more than anything, and if you're playing with your medic, it can be useful for closing the distance between where you need to get while you're Ubered and where you started from. But other than that, I mean, it's also kind of like the Degreaser. It's kind of playstyle dependent. It's not necessarily weaker in most situations, but it definitely feels weaker than the other options, such as the Fists of Steel or even the mittens that are able to stun Ubers for whatever reason. Then the Natasha, I feel similarly about that. I mean, this is very playstyle dependent most of the time, but I feel like most people will only really equip this if they just feel like playing support heavy for the most part. If you have a good team that will follow up on the damage that you're doing, or if they can take advantage of slowed enemies, then this is a good time to equip it. This isn't a good like carry as heavy item in my opinion. I think that you can definitely be more effective as like a team anchor with any of the other miniguns, except for the Hulong, I guess. But the Tomislav and the stock, honestly, like those are just better damage dealers. So I mean, like unless you want to just make a scout's life hell, there's not really any reason to equip this. Kind of, it's just based around a very specific like role that you wish to play, basically. The Do No Harm head. Whatever this is called. I forget what it's called. The Do No Harm head. This thing, I remember somebody saying, like, no, this is a straight upgrade because, like, the ability to see enemy medics, Uber, as well as, like, access vital information about the enemy team, aka their health, is, like, super useful. And it's, like, never situational. But I tend to disagree when it comes to pubs. Yes, in competitive play, like, where there's, like, people in Discord with you and you're, like, communicating constantly. Yeah, like, the ability to see people's health and, like, transmit it to other people on the fly, like, that's invaluable. And I can see why a lot of medics, especially since it's been unbanned in 6v6 recently, RGL 6v6, the Ubersaw has been getting replaced by this thing. I can see why that's a thing, because it's very vital information, very true. However, in casual mode, literally no one ever really, like, talks, and if they do, then it's usually just, like, joking around or, like, goofing off. Very little, like, actual, like, gameplay-related communication actually happens. So, if you're reading information and you're transmitting it to no one who's listening, then what use is it, really? It's pretty much only really good if you have somebody who's listening to what you're saying, because you're the person who can read it, not them. And so you need to physically say it in order for that information to be useful. And then the people listening have to actually like use it and translate it to their own game. That is very situational. When it comes to casual, like that's not going to happen very much. So that's why it's in here. The backscatter. Honestly, this is only really good against bad players because bad players have very slow reaction times, and the thing that counters this weapon is the ability to turn around after you've been damaged. And that's what makes this gun kind of weak, in my opinion, is you can run up and you can blast someone for extra damage in the back. But once they turn around, this is a weaker scattergun now, so you better hope that you kill them, because now they're facing you, and you're doing less damage with less clip. So that's why it's situational. The situation in which this is useful is when you're playing against players who don't react fast enough to turn around to counter the weapon, which, happens sometimes. Sometimes it doesn't. The Bonk. Similar to the Dead Ringer, actually. It's pretty good to bust through a choke that's unimpregnable, like on Dust Bowl or Gold Rush or whatever. Pretty useful for that. But that doesn't happen very often. A lot of scouts also might use it to get out of situations, and that is like playstyle dependent, but yeah, situational weapon here. The Phlog. Now, you're not going to ever find a game of TF2 where there's no soldiers and no demo men, so in that case, if there aren't any, then the ability to air blast becomes a lot less useful. And so the Phlog might shine in that situation. But in my opinion, I think the real reason to use the Phlog is if you're just getting a medic shoved up your butt the entire game. Because that's honestly the thing that makes the Phlog good, is when you're getting solo pocketed by a stock Uber medic player rather. Yeah, it's very much like, if you're playing on like Dust Bowl 3rd stage, or if you're playing like Upward Last or something, yeah, this thing is definitely the thing to equip. But honestly, the air blast is so good. It's like the thing that makes Pyro, in my opinion. Pyro, honestly, it would be the worst class by far if it didn't have air blast. So, I mean, the fact that this thing doesn't have it just kind of automatically puts it in the situational weapons category. But, yeah, moving on to the short circuit. I've already made videos about this. I've talked about it in videos that aren't even titled The Short Circuit. Yeah, my opinion on this is pretty known, but I mean, like, if you are playing engineer and there's like an obnoxious amount of spam going on, this thing can be very useful. Also, if you're playing on payload offense, this thing can be used to cheese a lot of captures very easily, and to a lot of people's annoyance. So unless you want to get flamed in chat, definitely don't use this thing. But it's only really useful if you feel like you're running into soldiers too much, or if they're like demo man up the wazoo. Like, it's kind of rare, but it does happen. I mean, like, if you're the entire enemy team is just snipers and heavies and pyros and stuff, like, this thing's usefulness drops to 0. So the rake, the back scratcher. I almost forgot the name of this one too. I've forgotten the name of 2 weapons so far, so feel free to make fun of me. Like I said, almost 10,000 hours in this game. The back scratcher literally is only useful when you don't have a medic on your team, which happens a lot. Or if you're just not going to play with your medic, and that means like you're playing heavily in the flank and working entirely off of packs. In that case, I think that honestly, if you're just like a roaming pyro, just like in the back, like annoying people, this thing is literally better than the Powerjack, in my opinion. It's super underrated, super underused. It turns every pack, like say there's a small pack, that turns it into a medium pack. Medium pack turns it into a full pack with a little bit. It's a little bit of an exaggeration, but that's how it feels like. A medium pack almost always will just give you full health. It's quite amazing, to be honest, and I think it's very underused for the flanking style pyro. But not all pyros are going to do that. So that's why it's in this situational list. The Spy-cicle. I feel like this is, again, literally only useful if you don't want to die to pyros constantly. If the other team doesn't have pyros, then there's like actually no reason to use this. It's very similar to the Darwin Danger Shield in that way. It's actually just a pyro get out of jail free card for the most part. So it's not, if there's no pyros, or if you're just not running into pyros, then don't use this because it's loud. It leaves statues all over the place. I use it for gun spy personally, because if I'm just going to be blasting people with a revolver, then This is just like a utility thing for me. Like if I get set on fire, then it's nice to just turn off the fire. But yeah, other than that, there are much better knives to be using. The Homewrecker, obviously not very useful if you're not gonna like try and unsap your engineer's buildings. If you don't have an engineer, it becomes a lot less useful. And if there are no engineers on the other team, it's a lot less useful. I mean, a lot of people were giving me crap that I put the I put in the weak to the cons that the sentries are weak to these specific items, and I listed a bunch of things like the direct hit and the Loch N Load and all this other crap. I put the Homewrecker in there because it has 100% damage to building stat, so it just does twice as much damage to all buildings, from sappers to sentries to dispensers, teleporters, all that. And a lot of people were like, Pyro won't get close enough to a sentry to hit it with the Homewrecker. That doesn't happen. It's impossible. Dude, play on Uncletopia. There are Pyros who manage to pull it off all the time. I don't know how they do it. They use the jetpack or whatever. They jetpack up to the roof or whatever, and then they like jump on top of the sentry and they beat it to death. It's amazing. It's hilarious, and it's super effective actually. So also you can Uber a Pyro. I don't know if you knew that. You can Uber a Pyro to run towards the sentry gun, and he can beat it to death very easily that way. You don't really see that much because, you know, Pyro brain off mode, they're just WM1 at the sentry. But next time you're playing Pyro and you're getting Ubered to kill a sentry nest, use the Homewrecker. You can two-shot every building in the game. It's quite good. Actually, let me check my math on that. I don't know if that's even true. 65 times 2, 130 times 2. It's 260. Yeah. You can two-shot every building in the game. See? I was right. All right, the Rescue Ranger. I've gone over this weapon a ton in the past. This is only really situational if you feel like playing around your buildings, if you want to make your buildings last longer, if you want them to live longer. Use the Rescue Ranger. If you don't care as much about your personal defense, or if you just suck ass at shooting your shotgun and hitting things, this thing is like the obvious choice, but still, very situational. The Loch N Load. Loch N Load is good for destroying buildings, very similar to the direct hit, although I will say that it's also very useful for throwing off Pyros. Pyros have gotten very used to the timing that it takes for a pill to reach them and for them to air blast it back. At close range, not so much, because, I mean, at close range, a Pyro can just kind of randomly right-click and hope that you happen to fire at the exact same time, and it'll still reflect and hit you. But at medium-ish range, yeah, there are Pyros who are able to look at your reload animation and detect, okay, he's about to fire now, and then they right-click. This thing kind of throws it off because the projectile speed is so damn fast. It's also very useful for, believe it or not, killing medics, because it's like a sniper rifle in some cases. Sometimes if you get really good at aiming this thing, you can literally just two-shot anything from across the map. It's quite funny. But other than that, the other options are generally better, to be honest. I'd even say that the loose cannon is sometimes better than this thing. The Razorback. If the other team doesn't have a spy, there's literally no reason to equip this. Yeah. So, therefore, situational. A lot of people are like, oh, the other team always has a spy. Yeah, of course. But sometimes the spy doesn't even stab you as sniper. Sometimes they ignore you. There are certain spies who just decide to ignore snipers. And some snipers can position themselves in ways where they won't have to worry about a spy, such as like playing so close to their team that a spy would have to basically commit suicide in order to kill you. So kind of play style dependent, but at the same time, this thing only really comes on if you just keep getting harassed by a spy over and over again. And the Pain Train, literally only good on offense, and if you feel like capping the point faster as Demo Man and Soldier. It's pretty much it. Yeah. If you're not capping a point, say you're playing on defense, or if you just don't care about that, then yeah, no reason to equip it. All right, so those are the examples that I gave for strong in certain situations, but weaker in most. These are my idea of like what an unlockable weapon is intended to be designed like. Now, we'll move on to maybe the opposite end of the spectrum, which is weapons that are strong in most situations and generally end up being better than stock. Now, these are weapons that I think, it's not that they deserve to be nerfed, because I think a lot of them have their place, and I think that a lot of them are very fun, and none of them really deserve to be nerfed. I think that it's just kind of like this weird situation where they accidentally kind of gave an unlockable weapon too many niche situations, like they gave it a niche situation that's so common that it might as well just be an upgrade. So yeah, that's kind of my idea behind why I put a lot of this stuff in this category. We can start with the Boston Basher. First of all, I want to mention that the stock bat for the Scout, and you'll run into this situation with a lot of melee weapons, you'll find that the stock bat for the Scout is not very good. It does 40 damage, it swings faster, but I mean, like, it's not very good. So yeah, you'll find that just a lot of the utility, or a lot of the items that replace stock that happen to be melee weapons only do so because of their utility. And the perfect example of that is the Boston Basher. You can do a Boston Basher jump, which just means you get like kind of an extra half jump if you time it right, which is useful. But probably more popular way to use this is just to artificially build Uber with a medic, which is something you only really ever see in like competitive play, but I see it in pubs sometimes too. I mean, like, it's always nice to just kind of have that opportunity. Also, I mean, like, if you manage to hit somebody with it, then it's a straight upgrade. Kind of like the direct hit. All you got to do is just never miss, idiot. The whip for the soldier, the disciplinary action. Honestly, like, this is one of two like must uses on soldier in my opinion, no matter what you're doing. Like, this is just so good. There's not really any downside to using it. You just kind of use it to get speed. You use it to get your teammates to the front lines faster, and you can use it to do like I don't know if there's like an official name for it, but you can bomb a lot more effectively. Like, you can do a rocket jump faster. If you whip someone and then immediately rocket jump in, it takes you further. So it just kind of gives you that option over the shovel. The shovel literally does nothing. I mean, it does 65 damage. That's it. There's so much better utility behind this than the shovel by far. The Atomizer, that is another, just in my opinion, straight upgrade to the stock bat for the Scout. If you take it out, you get a third jump. And recently in terms of TF2's lifespan, it got a funny buff where if you hit somebody midair with it, then you get like 7 extra damage or something stupid. But yeah, the third jump is really, really useful. This is probably my most used melee for the Scout, just because it makes it so you can make so many more jumps than you're able to without it. And you're not going to be hitting anybody with the bat, so you might as well just equip it. It's like, that's like the main use for a lot of melee weapons, to be honest, is just for utility. So you'll find that is a pattern here. Such as, we're moving on to the Fists of Steel, which I think is probably Heavy's best melee. Honestly, like, it makes it so you can very easily cross sniper sightlines without getting, like, quick scope to death. It makes it so you can very easily escape sticky situations, even more effectively, in my opinion, than the gloves are running urgently. Because while you're not fast, you take so much, like, you can just sponge, like, an insane amount of damage. It's really very good. And honestly, I feel like I don't really see a whole lot of heavies. Not that they don't equip it. I feel like it's just that they don't abuse it as much as they should. It's like, it's just so good. Sticking with heavy, we'll move on to the Tomislav. I'm sure that all the heavy main YouTubers have gone over this, but I think that the Tomislav generally, just overall, is better than stock for a lot of different reasons, and I'm sure that they've also gone into those reasons. But I mean, like, it's more accurate, it's faster, it's quiet. It just has all of these great advantages that while it doesn't do nearly as much damage at close range, most enemies are not going to be up in your face unless you're playing on like a very, very close quarters map. Most enemies are going to be medium range, and medium range to long range, honestly, is where this gun excels. And so it's just like you'll run into the situations more, and so this gun is going to be more useful all the time. The Lechrenger. I think that most spies stab people. They don't use their gun. So that's why I put it here. It's debatable. I think I made a little bit of a hint to some loadouts being more debatable than others, and I intentionally showed the spy at that moment because I do think that when it comes to, in particular, this gun and the next one that I'm going to go to, which is next to it, which is the Kunai, I feel like there's definitely like arguments to be made over like what's better. But I think that in my opinion, and I think that most spy mains that I've talked to about this subject generally agree that, like, when it comes to pubs especially, the Lechrenger is just better because you can stay invisible longer. You don't really use it to like shoot people or kill people, and when you do, usually they're low enough, like usually you're using your gun to like pick off a little weak antelope running away with like 2 health. This gets the job done just fine. And the cloak back on hit is also just super useful in general. I mean, like, it's a utility gun very much, but it's such a strong utility gun that I feel like it's better for the knife-oriented spy all around. And most spies are going to be knife-oriented, and that's why I think that it's good. And then we can talk about the kunai as well, which, like I said, it's debatable, but I put it in here because I personally think that it's so much more useful to be able to get like a huge overheal. I think you get like up to 185 or something ridiculous, like sometimes up to 200, I feel. I forget. I don't really play spy that much, especially kunai. But, man, it's super frustrating to play against a kunai spy who takes advantage of all of the weak players on your team who don't know that spy exists. There are some spies who are able to deduct at a first glance, like, okay, that guy knows what he's doing, and so I'm not going to stab him. I'm going to stab everyone else on his team so that I'm impossible to kill, and then I'll turn around and I'll kill him because I'll have like 200 health and I'll just be able to straight up out damage him. That just makes this knife so good. It's kind of like the Frontier Justice or the Islander of knives. You can just farm new players, and then it just makes you impossible to kill via the players that know what you're doing, know what you're up to. And that just makes it so good. I feel like it's just better than stock and most of the knife options for that reason alone. So, yeah. Oh, shit. I don't know if that picked up on the mic. I just knocked something over on my desk. And then the last spy item that I put on here was the Diamondback. I put that on here because it's just straight up so good. Like, it's kind of playstyle oriented in a way, but honestly, like, it covets such a common playstyle that it's basically just it's really good. You sap a sentry in a dispenser, 2 crits. You stab one guy, 2 crits. It's insane. And Spy's already going to be doing that. And that's the argument everybody always makes for this thing. It's like Spy gets rewarded for doing his job. And that's totally true. I feel like I just don't run into it that much because a lot of people prefer to use the L'Étranger, which is another reason why it's here. It's because, like, man, in a world where the Diamondback exists, people still turn that down for the L'Étranger. It's crazy. So yeah, the Diamondback, honestly, probably one of the best items in TF2. And I honestly don't really see very many people using it. It's kind of weird, but it's, I think, just obviously better than stock. The Wrangler. This is another thing I've talked about to death. It's better than the pistol simply because it just gives your building, or your sentry gun specifically, 1,000,000 health. And most engineers are just going to have a sentry gun near them all the time, so why wouldn't you equip it? Well, there are reasons why you wouldn't equip it, but I mean, like, if you're playing around your buildings, which most engineers are, then you're going to equip the Wrangler, because it just gives you so many great options for both defense and offense. Somebody is outside of your sentry's range, just aim at them manually, pester him, get him out of the sight line. Somebody's attacking your sentry gun, just press 2 on your keyboard, and then your sentry won't die. Somebody Ubered into your sentry gun, waste the entire Uber that they have to like put literally 700 damage into your gun in order to destroy it, and by the time that's over, the Uber's over, and then they didn't kill anybody, they killed an NPC. A non-player character died in that Uber due to you pressing 2 on your keyboard. So it's really, really good. Engineer's best weapon. Everybody knows that I think that. So anyway, we're moving on to the Panic Attack. Now this is like, it depends on the class that's equipping it, but most of the classes, you could say that the Panic Attack generally is better than stock. The stock shotgun, mostly because of the faster switch speed for a lot of the classes that use it as a secondary option, except for Heavy, because Heavy is mostly just going to be revved up and shooting his gun. And for Engineer, who, he's got his melee weapon all the time. I've made a video about this weapon. You obviously don't have to hear it again. I think people know why it's here. I think that the only exception is maybe Heavy. In fact, definitely Heavy. I mean, like, Heavy obviously, like, just doesn't benefit from any secondary that isn't the sandwich or the banana at this point. So, yeah. The Machina. Now, the Machina, I feel, is just so good. There's not really any reason not to use it unless you, like, really value hip-shotting people, I suppose. But, like, I don't know. You should just go for the quick scope at this point, you know what I mean? At least that's how I personally, like, view most sniper mains. It's just because of how many I've played against, and, like, very rarely will I ever get, like, hip shot. They always go for the clutch 360 quick scope. So anyway, this thing just straight up does more damage on full charge. It can collateral people on full charge. The Tracer's downside is like useless, and it doesn't mean anything in pubs because like most people know where the sniper is, by the way, because they get killed by him. So I don't know. I feel like it's just a sniper rifle that does more damage. Like there's not really any downside to that. And somebody pointed out that the Bizarre Bargain also has the same kind of issue with it, where it's like it's just straight up better than stock if you're just like good at sniper. And so I would probably honestly just put that on this list, or just replace the Machina with that, with Bizarre Bargain as well. Like I wouldn't have any problem with that. But honestly, I don't really play sniper enough to like heavily weigh in on this placement of this weapon. It's just that I see that it does more damage, and I see that it can collateral people, and the downsides just don't seem to really matter that much. So that's why it's on this list. Moving on to the crossbow. I think everybody knows why this is here. It's not contested at all. The needle gun is useless. It's probably one of the worst weapons in the game. Sorry, Array 7, but it's true. The crossbow, it does a lot of damage, and it heals. It makes your healing output like way better. Long range healing is overpowered as hell. It's so good. Like not in a bad way. It's just like so good. Man, I love the crossbow. Even as a I play medic pretty good amount, but even when I'm not playing medic, I love the crossbow because I know that every medic has this thing equipped because it's so good, and that means that if I'm hurt and a medic can see me, then I can stand still, press E, and I will get healed. Most of the time that's true. So yeah, this thing is just it's a no-brainer to be on this list. It's so good. We'll talk about the Ubersaw next, since we're on the topic of medic. This thing is also a no-brainer to use, especially in pubs where you can still get random crits on this thing. Yeah, you can blast people who get too close to you, and you get a free 25% Uber. That's insane. That's so good. So much better than the stock. I mean, the slower swing speed, like, who cares, man? Who cares? Medic shouldn't be doing damage anyway. The utility of this thing is so good. And it, like, changes the flow of the game just with one Ubersaw. With two Ubersaws, you can turn the game around. It's amazing. No reason not to equip this weapon, unless you're playing in competitive and you feel like if I get close to somebody, I'll die anyway because I'm playing against pro gamers. And so the do no harm head, the do no harm head is better in that situation. The gunboats. The gunboats are just, if you know how to rocket jump, then this is like a no-brainer, in my opinion. Maybe one of the banners would be a better situation, and if you're playing against pyros, then one of the shotguns would be a better situation, but most of the time you're going to be rocket jumping around. This is like the gunboats are the stock weapon of the secondary slot of the soldier. It's just true. Most soldiers just default to this thing. Yeah, that's why it's on here. I feel like it's just like every soldier is going to be equipping these. The Sandvich. Now, the Sandvich versus banana debate, I feel like, just comes down to if you have a pocket medic, then obviously you want to heal others more than you want to heal yourself. But I feel like you could also just use this if you're a roaming heavy. Like the banana is useful in that way, but the Sandvich, honestly, there's not really any huge downside to using the sandwich as a roaming heavy. So why not? I mean, like, especially compared to stock. I mean, the main reason why it's on here is because it's definitely better than using the stock shotgun. But even if you're comparing it to the banana, it's still better than the banana, just because one, it heals more, and two, you can heal other players better with it. And generally, you're gonna get like pocketed by a medic when you're a heavy. So, the Jarate, I feel like is like super underrated. The Jarate is like game changing sometimes. If you throw this into a choke with like 5 players in it and they all get Jarate'd, and then your team follows up on the choke with like a couple well placed grenades or like a couple sticky bombs or some rocket spam, they're dead. You wipe the entire choke, and all the sniper really had to do was throw his P in there. Really, really good. Also, combined with the knife that I couldn't name earlier, combined with that knife, it basically just makes it so if a sniper sees you flanking him, he can just one-shot you. It's kind of busted. I actually really dislike that combo a lot. Jarate is really good. Much better than the SMG, in my opinion. Moving on to the pick, the Minecraft pickaxe, the escape plan. This is like probably the best melee weapon for soldier, next to the whip. It's just so good, man. There's like literally no reason not to use it outside of the like if you're going for market gardeners. I think if you're below 100 health, you just go faster than normal. And if you're at like 30 or less health, you go like faster than a scout or some shit. It's like insane. It just makes it so you can just reposition so much more effectively. It makes it so that if you are getting overwhelmed, you can just like get out of there. Definitely better than stock and definitely strong in most situations. Let's see here. The Scorch Shot. The Scorch Shot is on here because it's just so good. It's probably one of the best pyro weapons right now. And it's probably one of the most annoying weapons in the game right now as well. It's just so easy to use. It's like insanely easy. It's just the most forgiving weapon of all time. I don't know how else to put it. Like, you don't have to be good at pyro or any class really to be successful with this weapon. It's borderline busted. And I think that the main reason why it should be changed is because it's very irritating to play against. Not necessarily that it's overpowered. It's just so annoying because it can stun lock you very easily. And it just does an obnoxious amount of damage for very little effort. And you don't really have to aim it. You just kind of point it in the general direction of somebody, and chances are you'll light them on fire. So in that way, it's both, I feel like, a better option than stock a lot of the time if you're playing like just passive pyro. And it's also a lot of the time just better than flare because it's super easy to hit. A lot easier to hit than a flare, that's for sure. Let's see. The Rap Assassin. I had a few people really questioning this one, but I think I just have a great disdain. Not disdain, but I don't think that the stock bat for Scout is good at all. So you might as well just put a utility weapon in that slot, and this thing can fire a bleed bobble just whenever. Like, it recharges super fast. So you might as well, like, you see a choke, just fire a bobble down it. Maybe you'll hit somebody. There's not really any reason, in my opinion, not to equip this thing if you don't feel like equipping any of the other options. Like, honestly, this might as well just be the stock bat, in my opinion. It does less damage, but, like, why are you hitting people with a bat? You have a scattergun, and you have a pistol. Those weapons do infinitely more damage at close range than the bat. No reason to use the stock bat, so obviously this thing goes on the list just by it existing, really. The Powerjack. The Powerjack is definitely hands down the pyro's best melee. It just makes the pyro able to reposition faster. It makes him faster in general. If he manages to kill somebody with it, he gets health back. It's like, yeah, it's so good. It's like insanely. It's over the top good. Not overpowered. It's just hands down the best option. I don't think that is like a debatable thing. I don't think anybody even really brought that up. However, people did bring up the Degreaser, and I will admit that the Degreaser is more playstyle oriented, but so much of pyro is combo based. Like, there aren't a whole lot of successful pyros that you see that just literally WM1 into people. I mean, like, you might get killed by them occasionally, but I mean, when it comes to like the pyro meta or whatever, it's very much a toss up between this and the stock. And I feel like that warrants it being on this list because there are certain pyros where they're just like, yeah, I only use the Degreaser because why wouldn't you? Like, you're only ever comboing people, you're flare punching people, you're shotgunning people, you're using the panic attack with it for even faster switch speed, you're using the reserve shooter for even faster switch speed. Like, yeah, there's just so many combo-oriented pyros out there that I feel like this deserved a spot on the list, although I will admit it falls into that debatable category that the Lestrange or the Kunai especially fall into. And the Pan, I mean, like, that's just obvious. Like, it has guaranteed random crits. So, yeah, that's why it's on there. Obviously, being real with you, obviously that was just a little joke to throw in. I feel like that was the one that got mentioned the most in the comments because, funny. There's nothing funnier than a decade-old joke, such as the Pan always crits, lol, that is so funny. Anyway, I don't even know if I'm going to upload this. Who wants to listen to me talk about this shit for 50 minutes? This is like a podcast at this point. But anyway, if this ever makes it to air, like I'm a radio station, if this ever makes it to YouTube, I appreciate you. Oh, before we go, I wanted to just kind of touch a little bit. I wanted to elaborate a little bit more on the intention of the wrench video a little bit because I saw that there were a lot of comments where they're like, yeah, it might be bad in certain situations, but I still like it. And there are a lot of people who I felt were giving off like kind of offended vibes or whatever that I trash talked a wrench that they liked. And I didn't really mean to trash talk a wrench. I like the stock wrench. Let's get that clear right off the bat. I like the stock wrench, and I feel like maybe I didn't make that clear because I spent the majority of the video comparing it two other wrenches and saying like, oh, but this wrench does this better and this wrench does this better. But I feel like I have to reiterate, and I feel like I made it clear in the video, but maybe it didn't drive it home enough, that the wrench is good on last points where you have everything built up to level 3. I did say that. I said, yeah, sure, this is good, but you might as well use the Southern Hospitality if you feel like it. So it's almost kind of like the Southern Hospitality is an option still. So it feels like the stock wrench still technically isn't better in any way, shape, or form than its competitors in any specific like concrete situation. That was the point I was trying to make. I still like the stock wrench. I obviously still use the stock wrench. If you look at the video, I have a Hail Zone stock wrench. I think I have over 10,000 kills on the thing. Granted, most of those kills happened before they buffed the Jag and the Eureka effect, but I mean, you look at my Southern Hospitality, like, I don't have any kills on that thing. I mean, it's bugged anyway. I mean, like, but whatever. I think I have, like, maybe 200 sentry kills on that thing. I hardly ever use it. I would honestly, personally, much rather just use the stock wrench than the Southern Hospitality because I've already talked about the Southern Hospitality in a video, and I said that I don't like it because it's boring, and I honestly would just rather use the stock wrench because I have an Australian version. And it's, like, double spelled. And on Halloween, the rockets that come out of my sentry gun are purple. That's a valid reason to use the stock wrench over whatever wrench. And I know that there are a lot of people who are like, well, I like to use a stock wrench because I have like a skinned version that I really like. That's fine. I don't have a problem with that. And I don't feel like you should interpret that video as me saying, I don't use the stock wrench because I like the other unlocks better. And if you use the stock wrench, you should feel bad because the stock wrench is bad. That's not the vibe that I was trying to give off. That's not what I believe. So I just wanted to make that clear. And overall, I feel like I wanted to avoid saying this in the video because it comes off maybe a little harsher than I intended, even though a lot of people still got a little bit offended that I insulted the wrench that they use all the time. But the way that I view the stock wrench, and I alluded to this a little bit in the video, is that if you don't really care that much about min-maxing Engineer, then the stock wrench is a fine wrench to equip. It makes Engineers so much easier to think about. You're just like, I don't have to worry about like, oh, am I, doing my little spreadsheet. Like, if you don't care about that, then equip the stock wrench. Don't even think about it. It works great. But me being, obsessed with Engineer, obviously, like I have an entire YouTube channel about it. I have incentive, obviously, to get better at Engineer. For one, I like it, and for two, I make videos about it, and I enjoy doing that. So I'm a weird situation, obviously, where I care a lot about that. But I know that there are people who just go Engineer because their team needs an Engineer, and they don't really think past that. And in that case, stock wrench, great wrench. Also, I will mention this. You guys know how I feel about random crits. I feel like when I like think about whether a wrench is like truly viable to me, I don't really think about how viable the random crit aspect of it is because I just like it's random. Like you can't rely on it. So there were a few comments that I noticed saying like, "Oh, you didn't mention how it always random crits. It has like a higher random crit rate because Engineer does more damage over time, so therefore like he has like a random crit thing stored from his sentry gun, blah blah blah." That's all valid points, but man, who out there is running at people with their wrench thinking like, I'm going to random crit you? Like, you have a shotgun for one, and two, like that's suicidal in the game. Like it's not a viable way to play Engineer unless you're messing around. And messing around in its by its very nature, it's not really viable. And I tend to, in my weapon reviews, talk about the true viability of a weapon. And so it's difficult to talk about. I think Lazy Purple said it great. It's difficult to talk about random crits because it opens up this huge can of worms within the balance of TF2. Like it's just something. It's just something that happens sometimes, and you can't like take that into consideration when you're like truly dissecting a weapon. So that's why I avoided mentioning the random crit thing. I think that it does have that advantage over the Southern Hospitality in a way, but I'm not going to like make an entire extra like 2-minute section about random crits because honestly, I hate random crits, and yeah, it's just pointless to talk about. And honestly, it's like really hard for me to see people interpreting certain things that I say in videos until like I put them out, and then I read comments and I'm like, oh, I should have like elaborated on that, or I should have like made it clear my intentions for that. It's, you know, it's a learning process, and I can't ever really get everything right. So most of the comments, I must say, were very positive, and honestly, it was a joy to surprise you guys with 3 videos in a row, because obviously my upload schedule is erratic and I don't really upload that much. So, and honestly, a little bit of behind the scenes, I originally wrote that video as one video, but as I started to go through it, I was like, this would be cool to do like an event where it's like a trilogy of videos, and like, ooh, I could use like the Halo music as like, I could use the first Halo music in the first one, second Halo music in the second one, third Halo music. I got like excited about the idea of a trilogy, so I technically made like a 25 long minute video, but I just split it up. But yeah, it's like midnight now, so I'm gonna stop recording this. And if you are listening to this, thanks for listening, and thanks for watching. I don't know what I'm going to put on screen if I do put it into a video format, but yeah, I appreciate you taking the time to hear me out, and I hope that this clears things up if you were confused about some stuff, and I hope that it starts a little bit more conversations in the comments of this video. This is definitely going on the second channel. It's way too long and too sporadic. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.